This is the CBS Evening News with Katie Couric.
Good evening. Katie is on assignment. There is little now standing between John McCain and the Republican presidential nomination. His chief rival, Mitt Romney, suddenly dropped out today. McCain opened up a wide lead in delegates on Super Tuesday, and Romney had virtually no chance of catching up. We have two reports on the GOP race, beginning with Chip Reed in Washington.
In a room packed with fervent conservatives, Mitt Romney was welcomed as their champion today, but joy soon turned to stunned disbelief as Romney announced he's suspending his campaign.
I feel I have to now stand aside for our party and for our country.
Even many on Romney's own staff were caught by surprise. Just minutes before, they were hanging campaign signs. So why did he do it? After Super Tuesday, he had little, if any, chance of catching John McCain, and a long, bruising primary, he said, would only harm the Republican effort.
Frankly, I'd be making it easier for Senator Clinton or Obama to win.
Deeply disappointed supporters said Romney had been the best hope for the party's future.
He was the only conservative left in the race. Now we're down to three left-wingers. I mean, you got a choice of Hillary, Barack, or McCain.
John McCain, now the clear Republican frontrunner, often feuded bitterly with Romney, but following Romney's speech, McCain graciously congratulated his supporters.
You did a fine job, and you are welcome to join my campaign.
But there was no doubting that feelings among conservatives toward McCain are still raw.
On the issue of illegal immigration, a position which...
For Mike Huckabee, who's still in the race, Romney's announcement was welcome news.
Now that the field is down to two, our chances have substantially improved.
Now, officially, Romney has not completely ended his campaign. He has suspended it. That means that if for some reason at some point John McCain had to drop out of the race, Romney could get back in and reclaim the delegates he's already won. Harry?
Chip Reed, thanks. Romney's campaign spent about $100 million on the race, including an estimated $40 million of the candidate's own money. He won 157 delegates. If you do the math, that's about $600,000 a delegate. But while McCain may be close to locking up the Republican nomination, he still faces a tough battle to win the support of hardline GOP conservatives. Senior political correspondent Jeff Greenfield has that part of the story.
As word of Governor Romney's decision spread today, the argument over John McCain's now apparently certain nomination continued among some conservatives. On one side, dire warnings about the unthinkable alternative of a Democratic president. On the other side, pointed remarks about his political weakness.
He's not getting the conservative base of this party voting for him. And he's going to need that if he has any chance of winning.
With only Mike Huckabee remaining in the race, whose appeal outside the South has yet to be demonstrated, there appears no plausible way to stop McCain. So why are some on the right talking about sitting out the fall campaign?
I call them the ABM voters, anybody but McCain voters. They are vocal. They are truly agitated by the notion of John McCain, but I think they are probably a smaller sliver of the party than we give them credit for being.
As for McCain, beyond showcasing his conservative voting record and his national security credentials, what next steps might he take?
I think he has to become just as comfortable campaigning shoulder to shoulder with Tom Coburn and some of these other conservatives as he is campaigning shoulder to shoulder with Rudy Giuliani and Joe Lieberman. I mean, we have to see him just as proud of his record as a fiscal conservative and as a social conservative as we see him with his reputation as a maverick.
McCain also may have some work to do on the money front. His frequent battles with drug companies, tobacco giants, and other corporate interests could make it a lot harder to tap traditional sources of Republican money, Harry.
So for all these conservatives we've been talking about for the last 5 or 6 minutes, is Mike Huckabee not a legitimate choice for them?
You know, they don't like him every bit as much as they don't like McCain. They have problems with him on immigration, on taxes. He has very un-Republican language about corporate fat cats and economic inequality.
All right, Jeff Greenfield, thanks so much. As for the Democrats, it's all about the money. Here's tonight's CBS News Campaign 08 notebook. Since Super Tuesday, Barack Obama's campaign has brought in more than $7.5 million in contributions. That's on top of the $32 million he raised in January. Meanwhile, Hillary Clinton, who lent her campaign $5 million last month, was ready to lend it $15 million more. But that's on hold now. Her chief fundraiser says that since Super Tuesday, her campaign has also raised $7.5 million from 40,000 new donors. The Clinton campaign denies it's in financial trouble or that any staffers are going without pay. To the weather now, the extreme weather, the tremendous winter storm that hit the Midwest. More than a foot of snow piled up in Wisconsin. In Madison, well over 800 vehicles were stranded on a highway overnight and into this morning. Emergency crews had to use snowmobiles to get around. And in Milwaukee, there were long lines of people and baggage at the airport when it reopened today. The snow had shut it down completely yesterday. On Capitol Hill tonight, the House and Senate approved a plan to give the economy a boost. It will cost $167 billion and give most taxpayers rebates of from $600 to $1,200. This latest version of the package includes $300 rebates for low-income seniors and disabled veterans. The bill now goes to President Bush for his signature. In the South, the tornado death toll is now at least 55. And 2 nights after the storm, the search for victims goes on. In Tennessee alone, tornadoes destroyed more than 1,000 homes, and tomorrow, President Bush will see it for himself. We have 2 reports. First, Kelly Kobiea.
Across 5 southern states, from Kentucky to Arkansas, it was a day for chopping down, picking through.
It's washable.
And trying to move on.
You don't think it's going to happen to you.
Officials now say there were 93 tornado sightings, the deadliest U.S. outbreak in a quarter century. One in Tennessee was an EF4, devastating, with winds up to 200 miles an hour. Powerful enough to level well-built homes and turn cars and refrigerators into missiles. Only 1% of tornadoes become this intense.
Too much stuff flying. I thought the house coming apart.
Donald Dallas had barely escaped with his own life Tuesday night when he heard his neighbor screaming for hers.
Right up here, a young girl holding a baby in her arms, going around and around, hollering for help.
She and her husband were huddled in this bathtub when the tornado ripped it and the rest of their house to shreds. That woman was Serena Farrington.
Did you think you were going to live?
No. No. I'm surprised that we did.
TV is still there. It's untouched.
Yeah, some things are untouched.
The towel, it's unreal.
Homeland Security Secretary Michael Chertoff toured Tennessee today and promised help. Recovery for Donald's family is on hold until the insurance adjuster arrives. Instead, they dug through their neighbor's home, the same neighbor they helped save.
It's really gotten to you.
Oh, yeah. I've lost everything, and they have too.
Damage estimates aren't in yet, but they're expected to be in the billions of dollars. And when you see homes like this reduced to a tangle of wire and drywall across 5 states, Harry, you can understand why.
Kelly Kobiea, thanks. And with all the destruction, there are also amazing stories of survival. At Union University in Jackson, Tennessee, 26 students were rescued from the rubble of their dormitory. More on that now from Jeff Glore.
Almost 48 hours later, Kevin Furness still can't feel his legs.
I had a pole driving into my back from up above.
He's still bleeding internally, but he's alive in his hospital bed at Jackson Madison County Hospital in Tennessee, where 64 victims of the tornadoes were taken. Kevin was buried under 25 feet of concrete and steel, what used to be a dorm at Union University. He was trapped for 3.5 hours with 6 friends.
I just started to punch the sheetrock as hard as I could, and every time I punched it, I kept hurting the guy next to me. But I kept just saying, "It's fine, man, they're right here." He just kept screaming, and I just kept punching.
Paramedics worked frantically to pull the debris away.
Cinder block walls, that's what we had to dig through and beat through and take out piece by piece.
As Kevin's father waited by the phone.
I went yesterday and walked to the pile. There's just, if you've been there, there's no way.
No way they should all be alive, but they are.
At one point, every single one of us said we weren't going to make it, and one of the other 6 guys said we were.
You kept each other strong.
We just kept going and knew that we were going to make it.
At this small Christian college, students told us they were witness to a miracle. Jeff Glore, CBS News, Jackson, Tennessee.
On the CBS Money Watch tonight, the slowing economy is hitting America's retailers on the bottom line. A survey out today finds sales in January rose just 0.5%. That is the worst showing in nearly 4 decades. There's much more CBS News ahead. The FBI just busted men with nicknames like Jackie the Nose and Fat Richie in the biggest mob roundup in years. If you thought the mob died with John Gotti, think again. Up next, growing miracles, the astonishing treatment that regrew this man's finger. The casualty count from the wars in Iraq and Afghanistan continues to climb. By the most recent estimate, more than 30,000 American servicemen and women have been wounded. But now, an amazing development could change how doctors treat even the most serious wounds. As Wyatt Andrews reports in the second part of our series, Growing Miracles.
Good afternoon, Hobbytown, USA, Lee speaking.
You might become a believer in the power of magic dust.
And I powdered it on until it was covered.
When you see how a special powder regrew the tip of Lee Spivak's finger.
I put it through the back of the airplane.
The half-inch he sliced off in the propeller of a hobby shop airplane.
Your finger grew back flesh, vessels, and nail.
4 weeks.
In 4 weeks.
Right.
Is this essentially what regrew Mr. Spivak's finger?
Yes, it is. We took this, turned it into a powdered form.
This powder is a medical product called extracellular matrix. Made from pig bladders, it's a mix of protein and connective tissue surgeons often use to repair tendons. But it's the matrix's unusual power to regenerate tissue that's helped launch a new field called regenerative medicine.
It tells the body, start that process of tissue regrowth.
At the University of Pittsburgh Center for Regenerative Medicine, Dr. Stephen Badalik believes the matrix somehow mobilizes cells, some of them adult stem cells, whose job it is to maintain and repair injured tissue.
It will change the body from thinking that it's responding to inflammation and injury to thinking that it needs to regrow normal tissue.
If this helped Mr. Spivak's finger regrow, could you grow a whole limb?
In theory.
That theory that it might be possible to grow an entire limb is about to be tested by the United States military. The Army, working in conjunction with the University of Pittsburgh, is about to use that matrix on the amputated fingers of soldiers home from the war.
Can we make skin? Can we make bone?
Dr. Stephen Wolf at the Army Institute of Surgical Research says the military has invested millions of dollars in regeneration, hoping to regrow limbs, lost muscle, even burned skin.
It's hard to ignore that this guy is missing half his skin. This guy is missing his leg. Is there any way we can make that go back? Some of that technology exists.
Several different technologies for harnessing regeneration are now in clinical trials around the world. This machine, being tested in Germany, sprays a burned patient's own cells onto a burn, signaling the skin to regrow.
You could fashion this into a tube like this.
Dr. Badalik is about to implant matrix material shaped like an esophagus into patients with throat cancer.
So we fully expect that this material will cause the body to reform normal esophageal tissue.
Some of the most advanced tests involve the heart. This patch of material is being put on like a Band-Aid to regenerate tissue damaged by a heart attack.
Injecting one.
And here, patient Mary Beth Babbo is getting her own adult stem cells injected into her heart in hopes of growing new arteries. Her surgeon is Dr. Jun Lee.
It's actually, if you will, what we would consider the holy grail of our field for coronary artery disease.
The holy grail, because if stem cells can regrow arteries, there's less need for surgery.
If people don't have to go through that, this would be the way to go if it works.
This is only 2.5 years old.
Lee Spivak jokes he's got a 69-year-old body and a 2-year-old fingertip. But his fingertip has researchers imagining a time when regrown limbs replace prosthetics, when regrown tissues replace surgery, when the body does its healing with cells from within. Wyatt Andrews, CBS News, Pittsburgh.
In other health news, Canadian researchers report that a controversial chemical can leach into the contents of plastic baby bottles. The chemical bisphenol A has been linked to cancer and infertility in lab animals. It was found to leach out of bottles that were heated. But other scientists said today there is no proof these chemicals pose a hazard to human health. When we come back, you thought The Sopranos was just a TV show. Well, it turns out the mob is still more fact than fiction. It's one of the biggest mob takedowns in years. Dozens of people were arrested today here in the United States and in Italy. Federal agents are going all out to bust the mob, saying they cannot afford to let up. Here's Chief Investigative Correspondent Armin Katayan.
59 members or associates of the Gambino crime family, including the top 3 bosses, were rounded up in pre-dawn raids in New York, Florida, and New Jersey, capping one of the biggest organized crime investigations in FBI history.
Today's indictment serves as a stark reminder that organized crime is not fiction. In fact, it is real, it is alive, and it is a pervasive threat.
The defendants, guys with names like Jackie the Nose and Tommy Sneakers, were charged with a litany of all too familiar mob-related offenses: murder, assault, racketeering, extortion, robbery, loan sharking, and drug distribution. 80 counts in all.
It covers more than 3 decades of criminal activity and reflects the Gambino family's corrosive influence.
Today's arrests also serve as a wake-up call for those who thought the mob was dead. Buried 6 years ago along with John Gotti Sr., the godfather of the Gambinos.
While you're out, what's your reaction to that?
Law enforcement sources tell CBS News that since 9/11, mob leaders, disgusted with Gotti's flamboyant style, have kept a low profile while shifting into high gear, exploding to the point where 1/3 of the FBI's criminal division in New York is now devoted solely to combating La Cosa Nostra, as well as emerging criminal enterprises headed by Albanians, Russians, and Asians.
There's really a cornucopia of vices and opportunities out there that they exploit as best they can.
Today, the FBI delivered what it called a walloping blow to some of those exploits. The latest round in a fight that's far from over. Armin Katayan, CBS News, New York.
After a 2-month delay, Atlantis and a crew of 7 are finally on their way to the International Space Station. NASA fixed a problem with the shuttle's fuel sensors, and bad weather stayed away from the Kennedy Space Center just long enough to allow today's launch. Atlantis is carrying a $2 billion addition to the space station. The Columbus lab is Europe's contribution to the program. Still ahead, Frank Sinatra, Cameron Diaz, Brad Pitt. You may be related to all of them. How you can tell in a moment. We end tonight with the birth of the blues, the baby blues. Here's Sheila McVicker.
Beyond their celebrity status, what else do these stars have in common? From Paul Newman to Frank Sinatra to Cameron Diaz, from snowy Moscow to Palestinians in Jerusalem, Danish geneticists say everyone with blue eyes is not just related, but descended from one person. In the basement of the University of Copenhagen, frozen in vats of liquid nitrogen, are thousands of DNA samples.
That is like our secret, is our gold mine. We dig down and find the samples we are going to use to ask specific questions about genetics.
And this time the question was, what makes blue eyes blue?
All people with blue eye color have a special fingerprint.
Brown, they say, is the default color for human eyes, produced by melanin. Blue eyes are caused by a genetic switch programmed to suppress the melanin. It's a genetic mutation. And in the DNA of hundreds of blue-eyed people tested by the Danish team, they found exactly the same mutation every time.
And what would the chances of that be coming from more than one person? It has to be from one person?
Yes, we are very sure.
The first blue-eyed person was probably born near the Black Sea just 10,000 years ago, when the entire population of the world was less than 50,000. Those mutant genes spread on a wave of human migration. Today, nearly 95% of Scandinavians have blue eyes.
What scientists don't yet know is if having blue eyes was some kind of evolutionary advantage. If blue-eyed people could see better in the low winter light of Northern Europe. Or was it all just about downright attractiveness?
Genetics really can turn your brown eyes blue, and now there is a whole new answer to that question. Where did you get those eyes? Sheila McVicker, CBS News, Copenhagen.
That's the CBS Evening News. Katie will be back tomorrow. I'm Harry Smith. Thanks for joining us. I'll see you in the morning on The Early Show. Good night.